Welcome everyone to this month's Intentional Success webinar. We're going to talk about how you prepare to upgrade your leadership team. And why would you need to upgrade your leadership team? Great question. So what's behind all of this? Hey, there's been a lot of stuff going on. You've seen how my content has changed. We're talking about scalability. We're talking about balanced businesses. And what we're finding out is that as we start to move companies around and shift things around and shift roles a little bit, that we're hitting some leadership gaps. And I think we need to have an open conversation about that, because it is not the end of the road. This is a solvable problem, and we need to talk about solving it. One of the reasons behind this is the subtitle: running a business is different from producing an event. And let's face it, we're in the event production business. So we hire people who do events, and that tends to be who we gravitate towards. It makes perfect sense, doesn't it? But however, that doesn't always bring the skill sets that we need to run a business. And I don't know how many people have said to me, well, Tom, I don't have an MBA. Well, you don't need an MBA to run a business, right? But you do need some business sense. You need some business savvy. And that's what I try and share with you guys. We can all learn how to do the things that need to be done, but sometimes we're going to have to shift our priorities a little bit. And that's the phase that we're in right now, is shifting a little bit of our priorities. So for those of you who are new to me, well, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I'm Tom Stimson. I work with owners and management teams that want to improve their strategic thinking and their decision making, produce better events, make more money, and do it with less stress. And that's a lot of what I'm going to focus on here today, is how can we have more fun doing this? And we've found the formula. It's getting better every month as we process this formula. So we're recording. The recording will be available at the end of the day. You'll get an email to tell you how to find it, bookmark it. It is always there. Questions, please use the Q&A box. Say hello in the chat box. Thanks, Stuart, for getting that started. Let everybody know where you're from, ask some questions, throw some comments in there if you want, but it's going to be the Q&A box where I'm probably going to be looking for things to answer when we get a little bit further down the road here. All right, so without any further ado, let's get started on all of this. So why am I having this webinar? Well, as I said in the preamble, as we move towards scalable processes, we're finding that they need different roles, and which sometimes means different talents, right? We're changing the way we manage our business. We're reorganizing some priorities. We're keeping more people in the office so that we can work on future business. We're making some good long-term business decisions, as opposed to some of the, the short-term, penny wise, pound foolish decisions that we've often made about sending everybody out of the office to go work on the show because, well, we're so busy. Why should we have anyone in the office? So that's part of why we need this webinar. We need hands-on leadership in our businesses, and that's business leadership. Yes, I do need people doing the tasks and doing the things, but I need people to manage the processes and make sure that the team are doing the things that they need to do to support all the future events, right? And we need career paths for our top contributors. This is a conversation that comes up a lot. You've got employees that have been with you 15, 20 years or more. And we often hear the phrase, well, I'm ready to get off the road. What am I going to do? Can I move into this position? But that also introduces some challenges, because we may have an extremely experienced person, then we move them into the wrong role. But you're going to see some roles today that I think are going to be very promising for all of those people, all those veterans out there that are trying to figure out where do they fit in the last third of their careers if they've been show people all that time. So when I start poking around in management and leadership, and I talk about upgrading leadership, naturally, some folks are going to get a little defensive, and I understand that. I'm not trying to put you back on your heels. Don't panic, right? We have a huge problem with the Peter Principle in our industry. Many people, just like myself, we did okay at something and we got promoted into something else, and eventually you get promoted up to the point where you're no longer effective. And that's what the Peter Principle is. And as a business consultant, I find a lot of people who, through no fault of their own, have been thrust into positions that they can't execute properly. And it's horrible. You don't want to demote them and you don't want to move them on, but we do need to have an honest conversation about putting people in the right places so that everyone can be successful. And it's not, if we're worried about who's reporting to who, that's the wrong problem to try and fix, right? If you feel like you're a person who's on the bubble management wise, please continue to watch this webinar, because I'm going to talk about highest and best use for your skills and talent. You didn't get where you are not knowing what you're doing. You know what to do, but you may not know everything that you need to know. You may not be good at everything that we're asking you to be good at, but you are good at something. So highest and best use means we get to use our skills and talents where they are most needed. Now, there's not always a job that fits that, but as long as we follow that principle, we have a pretty good chance that we're going to find spots for everybody that we want to keep around and should keep around, because they know our company, they're loyal to us, and we're loyal to them. The other thing I want to bring up here is that we have really two types of managers, right? We have people who manage processes and people that manage people. And there's not a lot of folks who are good at both. I'm a great process manager. I'm probably not the best people manager, right? There are other people who are much better at the soft skills than I am, right? But there's not a lot of people who are better at process management than I am. So putting me in the right spot is going to be important if I'm in part of your business, and you have lots of team like that. So keep all of that in mind as we're talking about this here today. Yay for process managers. All right. Management culture. All right. We're going to talk about management. So it's probably important that I share my philosophy or my view on management culture, because after working with hundreds and hundreds of companies, I basically find 4 management cultures. There are sales cultures, there are operations cultures, there are finance cultures, and there are consensus cultures. None of them are ideal, right? Sales-driven cultures is really, it's all about revenue. We bow to the revenue gods. We often find ourselves selling on price. When in doubt, sell it. Everybody else just needs to keep up with sales. That's typically the mantra of the sales-driven culture. Whereas in the operational culture, we don't like last minute stuff. We want to make a plan. We don't like things that upset the plan. We don't like changes, right, that mess with the plan, right? So operations has a different, creates a speed bump, whereas sales is the ones flying over the speed bump. And finance driven cultures, and yes, they are out there, they're very numbers driven. And it's not just the classic bean counter philosophy, because it's very difficult to have a finance-driven culture if you don't have a finance-driven owner in your business. And yes, a lot of these will mirror the owner of the company, right? But finance-driven companies, they hyper parse the numbers. They probably drill down and try to read too much into the numbers. They tend to turn down work that doesn't meet a gross profit based on a formula, which in my opinion is probably wrong. So there's a lot of stuff going on in those things that is non-ideal. And then consensus is, how do I put this nicely? Analysis paralysis. If everybody's got to agree before we can move forward, we're probably never going to move forward. Consensus-driven companies are generally slow to change. They tend to be very reactive. And the odd thing is they're good at doing shows, right? Because when it comes to show site, we don't have time for consensus. We have to find that solution and move on, right? But when it comes to running the business, there's this whole philosophy that we all have to come together. Let's have another meeting about it. Let's ask everyone, right? Did we ask everyone? And that creates a whole nother set of problems. Now, this is the nature of companies. So, when we're trying to help an organization move forward, we're not going to change the culture, right? Culture changes itself. It's really hard to change it from the outside, but we can approach that culture with an understanding of what lens they're going to look at things through. Our goal, of course, is balanced management, right? I always talk about sales operations, finance as the three-legged stool. We want all those legs to be the same length as much as possible. But nowadays, I'm talking about, selling, planning and procurement, selling, planning and finance, or management. We want these things to be balanced. So we still basically have a three-legged stool. I'm going to show you some more of that when we get down talking about organization charts. So what do we see? What are we looking for? What tells us that we have a balanced management group, right? One of the first things that I'm going to notice is that I will find clear sales targets. If I say, who's your target customer? I will get the right answer. It's not anyone who can buy from us or, people with a big budget. Those are not useful. Clear sales targets are, titles, roles, channels, the value proposition they're looking for. If we have clear sales targets, if we have acceptable margins, in other words, we know what a good margin is, when a good margin isn't, and when to accept them. If we have realistic expectations about what we can accomplish from a sales growth and profitability standpoint, that's a good indication that there's some balanced management going on there, because it takes a lot of compromise to get to that point, right? And notice I said compromise, not consensus. The opposite of consensus is compromise. That's how we move forward. So intentionally filling a sales funnel with the right opportunities is ideal, right? That needs to be our goal. And that's what I'm looking for from my management team and in an organization where we're trying to achieve balance. Now, I'm also looking for expert planning, communication, and fulfillment, right? We have to be able to do a show. Okay. What does it take to do a show? It's planning, it's communication, right? You got to have all the parts and pieces there. Lots of little elements, logistics, all those things, travel, getting the right people. I understand all of that. But we need to take it seriously, and we need to know how to do it consistently through processes that other people can understand and contribute to. So consistent preparation and support for all projects. If I find an organization that talks about big shows and little shows and that's not important, we need to spend our energy here, then I know that there's a lack of balance and consensus within the organization that's going to hold us back. Metrics. We do have to look at numbers, right? Okay, we have to look at the numbers, but we have to look at the right numbers. And if we look at numbers, they need to be actionable, right? I don't look at numbers for numbers' sake. If the number is too high, what am I going to do? If it's too low, what am I going to do? If it stays the same, what am I going to do? That is an actionable number. We need process support. We need to recognize what our processes are so that we can keep them moving and keep them oiled, right? We need effective infrastructure for all of this. If I'm having to worry about, is my internet going to work at the office today? Or the toilet's going to flush? Do we have coffee if a guest comes over? I don't have good infrastructure. If the air conditioning's not working and it's 105 degrees out, that's a problem. If I have to worry about that, then I'm not doing the job I should be focused on. So knowledge-based decision-making and the tools to do good work will help keep this team balanced. One last thing, the professional execution of deliverables. I already talked about the planning. You can have expert planning and then mess up the deliverable, right? Go out and half-ass it. I don't think you do that. If you did, you probably wouldn't be on this webinar. Most of us are pretty darn good at doing shows. Executing shows is what we do. But do I have the support and the accountability that I need to always get the desired outcome, right? All of this stuff is tied together. I can do a great show through sheer will. It may not make it into the brochure. You know what I mean? Sometimes we get through the show just by dumb luck. And if we're even luckier, the client doesn't know what what S show it was. However, if we are good at professionally executing things, we overcome the obstacles, we solve the problems, and we do so professionally and look professional. Now, that's all out of the way, right? We're talking about upgrading the management team. Let's look at some org charts. 50% of you don't have an org chart, or one that has anything to do with who works there now or how you do things. You created it for your banker 5-10 years ago. I get that. The other 50% of you have an org chart. 80% of those people are going to tell me we have a flat organization, right? So our org chart's pretty flat, right? We're not big on titles, which means that you haven't given a lot of thought to it. And the rest of you probably have what I would consider a very vertical org chart, very much top down, that you have solved your problems through hierarchy, right? Which is kind of human nature. Org charts are, intentionally or not, hierarchical, which is why so many people try and stay away from them. But how you run your business does matter. How processes flow does matter. Who's responsible for them does matter. This is a pretty typical org chart. Now, I will point out that I consider this a non-scalable organization. I have clients who are on this call right now who think this is their org chart because it is such a common way of laying out an organization, right? This is what we end up doing. I've got 20 to 25 full-time equivalents on this org chart. There are 8 people reporting to the owner or the CEO. 8 people, 8 direct reports. Those direct reports are not actually accountable to each other, right? And you'll understand why in just a second, right? In addition to those 8, there's another 8 people on this org chart who also have a direct line to the CEO because, well, their managers aren't really managers. They're not actually managing them. And why don't they manage well? Well, let's take a look at this. Sales manager. Who's the sales manager? It's the oldest salesperson. It's the person who's been there the longest. You've got marketing. Nobody knows what marketing does, and they actually have no authority, so nobody listens to them anyway. Ops, the director of operations is almost always your oldest warehouse manager. It's the first warehouse manager who's still with the company, right? The director of production is your oldest PM, okay? Their father time or mother time, okay? Creative director, nobody has control over them, and we know less about what they do than marketing, right? And then there's the office manager, and then there's a controller, and we're not sure what they do either, right? They're the only ones left in the office when we're really busy. So what makes this non-scalable is that what you're looking at here is 7 different silos. Any individual silo in an organization can stop progress. And this is what happens all the time. So in non-scalable organizations where we have too many silos, the opportunity to impede progress is palpable, right? If the director of production doesn't like that solution, they're just going to dig their heels in and nothing's going to happen. All of these people, in the orange line up there are important to this business. That's why they're up there in orange. These are what I would call director level people in a company this size. But the problem is that most of these people would not be in this position if not for the fact that they got promoted or put into that position because we couldn't come up with a better solution. So we plugged a gap in opinions, in control, and accountability by making yet another person a director in the company. Okay. And generally, I'm going to find if this is your organization, I'm not going to find anybody here who has any business experience outside of the company that they're working in or the company they used to work at, which, oh, by the way, looks exactly like this. So I got a lot of experience with this org chart. Okay. I helped develop this org chart. This is not the org chart I would help you develop today. The goal here, if you have no other takeaway from today's webinar, we have to get rid of the silos. The silos looked like a solution. It looks like we're putting all the right knowledge in the right place. But in fact, what it does time and time again is keeps us from moving forward, right? We've got that potential blockage. When you have silos, every silo expects every other silo to be the one that has to change. We're doing everything right. These guys have to change, right? If they would just do it this way, we could keep doing it our way and we'll all be happy. There's always that implicit threat of rebellion when you have silos, right? And everyone who's leading a silo, all those people on those director line are individuals who the company, not just the owner, but collectively, we all think those people are irreplaceable, except for marketing. We don't know what they do, right? So everybody here is irreplaceable. So we don't want to upset the apple cart. But I got a solution, okay? The solution is that we need to separate the selling process and planning together, selling and planning a project away from the execution of a project. You're going to let that sit in your brain for a little bit, because right now I know there's a lot of resistance going on there, is that, well, execution is everything. So execution needs to be involved all the way at the beginning. Not having execution involved is why selling is never right, blah, 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 blah. Stop. It's okay. We're going to get there, right? If we separate the selling and planning, which is our core competency, from execution, which is also a core competency, but a completely different competency, right? Execution starts when we load in the show. Every freelancer knows when execution starts. It's when I get the paperwork and stuff shows up. That's when we start executing the show. Everything before that is sharing information and communicating, right? If we separate the selling and planning from the execution, we can have an organization that has no more than 4 direct reports to the owner or CEO, which would be ideal. And for a given size of company, this is going to vary, and I'll talk about different company sizes. So hang with me there. All right. If we take that last org chart and we redo it, I'm still looking at the 25 to 30 people in this organization, but I've created 3 different director level roles, and I've put people into management roles. And I want to talk a little bit about the difference of that. So directors are process managers, and they have direct reports that have clear lanes of operation. And we limit the number of direct reports that they have. Okay. The bigger the company gets, we don't really change the number of direct reports they have. We now have managers or supervisors underneath them. This org chart, a 30-person company can handle $10 million profitably, but it could also handle $30 million of business profitably. And I'm talking about full service audio, video, lighting, technical production. Right? And that's the wonderful thing about this. If I can handle $10 million profitably with this organization, how much money am I going to make if I'm doing 30 million? It's a lot more, a whole lot more, which is why I am preaching the scalability of philosophy, because we have a way to make life much easier, make a lot more money doing it, and have a business that we won't lose sleep when it's a slow month and we don't have a lot of revenue, right? This company will survive seasonality. And trust me, if that company is slow doing shows in July, all of these people are still busy because we have shows in August, September, October, out into the future, right? Now, director of customer success. That's a current popular way of saying director of sales. Pick your title, pick your flavor. We put marketing under this person. So director of customer success is not a salesperson. They're not selling on the side. They're not your closer. They're not your business development person. They are a professional executive that is directing all of your revenue. And they're making sure that not only do you have all the revenue that you need, that you're growing that revenue and that revenue is profitable. They need marketing underneath them. Marketing may have some people working underneath them. Business development would report to a director of customer success because they need to be aligned with the mission of the selling group, right? All the sales reps will line up under here. We add a technical designer and or a creative director, depending on the type of business you are, because we cannot successfully sell the kinds of jobs you want to do without technical expertise dedicated in the sales team. If your salespeople are having to chase down a project manager, text them on job site, hope they come back from a meeting, try and get them scheduled for a site survey after they just did 3 shows back to back. If that's the life you're living, this is where you want to be. Put a technical resource in the sales team. And yes, there's a solution for a less than 10-person company, and I will get to that. So we got technical design on here. Now I've got a fully self-contained selling unit. I can develop new business through marketing and business development. I can service the business that I have. I can retain the business that I have. I can get proposals put together without needing department heads or technical directors or project managers, but those people are still out there if I need their help and advice. Director of planning. If I sell something, I got to do it. Okay, customer success and planning do overlap in that they have to collaborate, and planning is always looking into the sales pipeline to understand what's coming up. And within planning, I'm going to have more talent for planning, production management. Okay, if you're going to have to draft or draw or do CAD for shows, I got to put that person in there. Communication is a huge part of the planning group, because the output of planning, if the output of customer success is a full pipeline of profitable, well-sold jobs, okay, then the director of planning's output is a show book that I can give to any show lead to go out and execute the show. So I need production management anchored inside of planning, not out doing shows, technical drafting. I need scheduling. Read into this. This is also procurement. If your company gets bigger, we will separate procurement out. There'll be another orange box up there on the org chart, but we'll call it scheduling for now. But my inventory, purchasing, subrentals, logistics, talent, service, repair, all fall underneath the scheduling. The warehouse manager, and if you look at scheduling, that's generally going to be inventory management as well, inventory allocation for jobs. So planning is going to decide where all the gear is going to come from, and then resolve all of the shorts with proper documentation and subrentals and flows, all of it going into the show book so we know what the hell is going on. The warehouse manager is in on all this because they've got to plan and schedule their warehouse. They need to know when they need outside technicians to come in and help their very small prep crew, none of whom are show technicians and none of whom are drivers, but I'll throw in a local driver because there's probably work every single day for a local driver, and not delivering shows, probably more than likely picking up subrentals and returning and that sort of thing. This will get you a $30 million company with 30 people. And I have clients who have taken this org chart from 10 million up into the mid 20 millions without batting an eye. And they're still thinking they can handle more. This will go a long way. And you don't have to add a lot to this to get it to go a little bit farther. Now, moving over to the last group is the business services, the admin, if you will. You know, I need office management, I need HR, I need IT. If you've got a receptionist, these are all the internal services that I need to rely on if I'm any one of these other people, right? Like I said, I need to know that the toilets are going to work. So when I come to work, I need to know that the IT is going to be there. If I need desktop support, I need it quickly. A 30-person company that doesn't have a full-time IT person who is dedicated to helping every individual, and every single one of these people is on a computer. Okay, we need full-time support. Okay, having our senior production manager is good at IT. He put the network together. Don't do that. Hire a real IT person. Outsource them if you have to. And then I've got the finance, the controller with an AP/AR clerk, maybe even a payroll clerk, especially if you're in California. But in this organization, there's a lot of outsourcing of labor. Therefore, payroll is a very, very big job, as is HR. So there's a quick look at that kind of company. And notice I got 3 direct reports. I've got room for 4. I could even go to 5 in the right organization. But let me bring up the issue that if many of you are going to choose to have some sort of direct workers on your team. Notice in the chart that I just showed you, there were no technicians. There's no field PMs, okay? Because technically we could outsource all of those. But more importantly, because it is another group of processes. So if I'm going to have those people on staff, I need a director of events, and we're going to manage all of the event processes and the people who are doing it. So my show PMs, my show technicians, my graphics operators, my video editors, my producers, all the people that only have something to do if we sold something. These are all direct cost people. They all appear above the line. they should all have their own manager who is also responsible for not only their utilization, but their results. Make sense? So this group of people right there, when I said we're going to separate the selling and planning from the execution, there's your execution right there. This model has so many benefits. But until you start to experience it, it's hard to realize, but I'm going to do my best to help you understand what this looks like. So here's our selling group. They acquire revenue, they retain revenue, they improve the revenue relationship with those customers. We have the planning group. They're going to allocate the resources. They're going to procure whatever we don't have. They're going to document everything so we can hand it off to the execution group, who does all the show side, brings the reports back, puts that back into the funnel so that we have all the information we need to constantly keep improving all of our processes and solutions, right? We have business services looking out over all of this with all of the support that we need, from IT to HR to cake day, if that's important to you, birthday cake day, right? I like to say that the selling and planning groups are future focused. Yes. Are they going to deal with stuff that happened today that's in the now? Yes, occasionally, but most of their time, they are looking at the next job or the next 10 jobs. Show people, and this has always been the big difference between show people and office people, show people live in the now. I was a show guy for years. I liked working on shows because all I had to worry about was that show. I don't have to think about anything else. I'm not worried about that drawing. You have people in the field out there right now who are sitting on headset on a show, working on a drawing for a future show. Is that the best you can do? Right? How would you do it differently? Right? So collaboration and cooperation are the biggest benefit of all this. And we are now designed for that to happen because we got rid of those silos. Now I'll talk a little bit about the director's role. The director is somebody who focuses on business. A director in a live event production company with 30 or 500 people, anywhere in between, doesn't necessarily need to be from our industry, because what they are good at is monitoring results, making process improvements, coaching employees and workers to do the better work, and making sure there's collaboration, communication between the selling, planning, execution, admin divisions, right? The directors are really above the fray. Now, the downside of a director for many of you owners is the directors are typically not people who are going to run out and load a truck because we got busy or we didn't plan well. However, we still have managers, right? So the bigger an organization, the fewer tasks that are managed day to day by managers or performed by managers, because managers are focusing on the actual deliverables. Yes, they're maintaining and operating the process. They're giving feedback on the process. But if they're constantly working on jobs that are in the future, they don't necessarily have the time or the resources to manage or change the process without help from above, right? They're going to have needs. They need to communicate them. They can communicate them up. There's somebody there to listen to them. They're focusing on, managers are always focusing on optimizing capacity. We want as much throughput through our limited resources as we can. And managers delegate, okay? So if I'm looking at an operations manager and they're buried in the computer and they're constantly trying to figure out how to flow equipment, there's something that they did not delegate, right? And if they delegated everything else and that's the only thing they have left, was that the right thing to not delegate, right? How are they managing? How are they maintaining the process? They're not open to communication if they're trying to figure stuff out. We can look at what managers do, but as long as we're clear that managers get tasks done, they don't necessarily have to do the tasks. However, if you fail to get the task done, you're going to have to go out and load the truck until the crisis is passed and we go back and figure out why you didn't get the task done so it never happens again, right? Now, many of you in smaller companies are saying, yeah, but sometimes we get shorthanded in the warehouse. It's great that I have an ops manager who will jump out and run out and help prep a show. Their job is to make sure that they are never shorthanded in the warehouse. If you are ever shorthanded in the warehouse, that is a lack of planning. You don't have enough resources in planning, which is why you have that problem. So we're going to run out of excuses for crises in this model. So quick recap on what these groups are doing. Come on, slides. So as you're, I know lots of comments here about everybody's org charts, right? As you're thinking about your organization, you say, okay, I'm going to sit down with a piece of paper and do the exercise. Who should go in sales? Who should go in planning? I said, wait, before you do that, define what sales is in your organization, right? My suggestion is it has something to do with filling the forecast with properly quoted and confirmed orders so that planning can look farther ahead. The internal customer of sales is planning, right? Planning's job is to deliver a complete show book to the show lead, right? We got to have a full plan. We got to document everything so that the show lead can take over and do the show. We are trying to reduce reactive activity. We're trying to empower the show lead. Our internal customer is the show crew, right? The admin group, we want to take care of all the finance, personnel, and support issues so everyone else can focus on their roles. We need to make those problems go away. Okay? We need to prevent them from happening and take care of all the cultural things that you want to have done. If you want to have parties, celebrations, barbecues, you need people to take care of that. You can't just rely on your show people to do that because they should be focused on the future. And if they're not, you've got too many show people. So assign the right processes to each division and then start looking at your people. Who are the right people? And you can go back to the org charts, and I'm going to show you a couple more and say, who's the right person for that role? Right now, my favorite way to get an organization started with this is find out who the right person is for the selling, technical design, and budgeting role. Who is going to round out the sales group by making sure that every job is properly quoted for something that we know will work, right? We don't have any dumb technical mistakes. We don't have any pricing FUBARs, that we have somebody to take on that role to make sure that sales can work independently of the execution people who are out busy doing shows right now and don't have time to answer sales's questions, though they will if they can, right? So assign the right processes and then start adding the right people. I suggest you fill that technical advisor role in the sales group. Now, a couple of things to stop doing, and then I'll show you some more chart examples. If your best field project manager is also your IT person, that doesn't work. Okay. You know my theory of hats. You know, you can't have a hat that is a priority and also have another hat that is a priority. So if I have an IT emergency while my best field project manager is out doing a show, I'm messed up, right? I'm screwed. Stop doing that. Admit that this is a potential crisis and this is a huge risk in this day and age. Now, another thing that we're going to do that you'll find that you won't need to do in this model is assign a project manager as soon as we're talking to a client. It's an opportunity. Oh, I need to do a site survey. Let's assign a project manager. Makes my head hurt thinking about it. Now I need way more project managers than I will ever actually have events for, because every opportunity, whether I close it or not, has a project manager assigned to it. And the whole philosophy, I'll just give you an example of how messed up we are. The idea that the person who does the site survey is the person who has to do the show. Who made that up? We're going to go measure a ballroom that we've measured 10 times before, and that person has to go do a show. We're completely misinterpreting what a site survey actually is. Now, another thing you notice is I don't use a salesperson as a sales manager. Right? Why would I wreck up a perfectly good salesperson by putting them in charge of people that are really unmanageable, right? It takes a professional manager to manage salespeople, and they can't do that and be responsible for generating revenue. You would be amazed at how much more productive a sales team can be if they have proper sales leadership, who is not also beholding to clients and proposals and budgets that they have to generate as well. if they can 100% focus on keeping the sales team productive, helping them filter projects, helping them make the next steps, helping them put the proposal together correctly, helping them close, that is far more valuable than any business that they might happen to write that somebody else would have written anyway, right? Another thing we do is we assign staff. If you've got staff technicians, you assign them before you book freelancers. Again, who came up with that rule? That doesn't make any sense at all. These are the same people who also complain about last minute jobs. Well, if last minute jobs are a problem, then don't book your staff. Keep some of them back so you have some more people to handle last minute jobs, because finding a freelancer last minute right now is really difficult, isn't it? What's the logical solution? Well, we just don't do last minute work. That doesn't make sense. Okay. Your best customer is going to call you at the last minute. Wouldn't it be great if one of your staff people was available or could be easily moved around so you could put them on that job and get it taken care of, right? The other thing we do all the time is we game our resource to avoid extra cost. Well, let's wait and see if this show happens. I'll give you the perfect example of this. I call it avoiding marginal net benefit. That marginal net benefit. Don't take a risk that you can spend $1,500 so that you can save $500 if there's a chance that anything could go wrong. I'll give you an example. Listening to a client's production team going, hey, we have these pieces of gear that we need to get from this midnight loadout to this 8 a.m. load in on the next day. It's like, well, we can just throw it in a van and drive it down there. Great. What's that going to cost? $1,500. Awesome. What's it going to save us? Well, it's $2,000 of sub rentals we don't have to spend. Awesome. It'll save us $500. What if the truck breaks down? Okay. Spend the $2,000. The marginal net benefit, all the time and energy we spent trying to engineer that little bit of savings, when in fact, if that gear had come back, if any of those gear, we get to the midnight loadout, what if the gear's broken? Right? Penny wise, pound foolish. An organization that really understands planning and procurement and resource allocation doesn't make the kind of choices that I'm talking about here. These are some of the problems I'm trying to solve, because you have far more capacity than you think you do if you update your processes. Now, I promised you some more org charts. I'm going to deliver on org charts. All right. Here's that $10 to $30 million company again, with mostly internal resources, right? I don't have the show execution team over here, but I have all the people that we just talked about. So no one on this chart does shows. They don't drive a truck other than the local driver, and this is by design. Technical design belongs in sales where it should. The scheduling manager is also the purchasing manager for all these groups. Service and repair should be outsourced most of the time in this day and age, right? You don't have enough broken stuff to justify a full-time service repair person, but 3 of you in the same town could probably share the same freelancer or the same independent repair person and get all your stuff fixed. You can also send stuff back to the manufacturer. It's just a different era than it was back when, I had people fixing television sets, right? So managers and above, so everybody who's orange and everybody who's gray on this chart are making business decisions every day. They can affect the bottom line through their actions every single day. Do not distract them. Give them the support they need. This company, they can make money at 10 million bucks. They can make a lot of money at 30 million bucks if they have the right processes. Now, let's go down to a slightly smaller company, a $5 to $10 million company. In this situation, I'm going to have the CEO happens to be, they love sales. This would have been a sales-driven organization. So the CEO for the time being is going to run the sales group. Notice I still put the technical designer into that group, even at this size. We can do that. We got however many sales reps, 1, 2, 3, depending on the size of the company, the type of work that they're doing. I can outsource marketing. I move over into operations. I've got inventory and logistics, warehouse managers. This doesn't look that different from what you have right now. Look at what we're outsourcing here. If I need extra techs in the warehouse to help prep, I can hire them. I've got technical drafting I can outsource for shows to create the show book, service repair. Okay. So this is actually not that different, except that we are not stealing any of these people to go out and do direct work. And I still have an office manager who may also be the bookkeeper, maybe an APAR person. I can outsource payroll, HR, IT, any one of a number of things. I can keep this company, under 10 employees, maybe get up to 12 very, very easily. Okay. Now let's go a little bit smaller on here. And now we're in an under $5 million company, fewer than 10 employees. There's probably one or two people on this chart who will go out and do some shows. Probably the project manager will go out and do some shows, or the owner. In this case, I made the owner a technical director. We can't get them off of shows. It's one of the first things I ask my clients. It's like, when there's a big show going on, where are you? Well, they're either on show site, calling the show, directing things, they're taking the client out to lunch, they're there being seen, or they're busy selling the next show, or they're in their cabin. I don't care where you are, but help me know what you're going to do so we can build the organization correctly. Now, if I have a owner TD type situation, then I'm probably going to put a technical designer underneath them so that we can duplicate that persona, because obviously, in a small company, the owner is the brand. They are the company. That's who customers are buying from. So I need somebody that looks and feels like them. If I have a sales rep, I can put them underneath that person because I need somebody to process the transactions. Technical designer will make sure that we are budgeted properly. They know how to communicate with the owner. They know how to get the job done while the owner's out on a job for 2 weeks. I'm going to have an operations manager, which is basically doing all the planning and procurement functions, and a warehouse manager and a local driver. Does this sound familiar? Okay. And then the office manager / bookkeeper. Everything else I can outsource. Anything that I need, even a company this size needs some marketing, we're just going to outsource it. So this is also a very scalable model if I keep these people inside the office as much as possible. If I'm not stealing people to save a buck, and I'm not wrecking my ability to sell and plan future jobs because I just wanted to have this person make a delivery who'll only be gone for an hour, which means 4 hours. Okay, if we're not making those kinds of decisions where I'm stealing the warehouse manager, we're going to get all the work done that we need to get done, right? And that's the beauty of all of this. So which kind of brings us to the whole idea of, do I need to upgrade? Because you talked about upgrade, or do I need to change roles? And the answer is yes. Okay. You have some people who need to change roles. You have some positions that need an upgrade from what you have, right? So as I said before, sort for the highest and best use, put the people into the processes where they are going to be the most effective. And then we're going to look for the gaps, right? We can hire for the gaps. And for director roles, if I really truly need director roles, if I'm that larger company with 30 plus employees, you're going to do a wide search, right? I can recruit that person. They don't even have to be from our industry or a company exactly like ours. They can be from an adjacent industry or maybe a former buyer, but they need to have that management ability, which is more important than our industry ability. Now, for manager roles, I'm going to look inside of our industry, right? Now, that's a little different. I want some experience. Yes, they're going to have to adapt to our processes, but they're going to have a base of knowledge. We're not going to have to explain to them what we actually do for a living. Supervisors, it's much easier to hire for aptitude and attitude and then train them. Sometimes you will find somebody who's already got some experience and you have less training. If they have the right aptitude and attitude, bring them on. But we can train most supervisors in our industry because all of these jobs are anchor positions. Where we get into trouble is that training for shows is so different. Okay? And the people who do shows are so different from the people who work in the office, right? And I've been on both sides of this. I grew up being a show guy. I started doing shows when I was 8 years old. I know what being a show guy is. I remember being on the road. I've slept behind many curtains. I've slept in road boxes. I understand that life, but how can I do that and be effective in the office? And likewise, people who are good at that are good at that, and they actually enjoy it, and they will keep on doing it. Okay. People who are good at office work are good at office work. They may never understand what it's like to have to go out to dinner with a group of 8 people that you don't want to hang out with because the producer said you had to, right? It's a different world, right? So we're to that point where I'm going to answer some questions. I already see some questions coming up in here. But while you're thinking of your questions, and please post in questions about anything, but certainly questions about your management upgrades and process, this is the time to start to do it. A couple of announcements. Jumpstart workshops. I'm narrowing in on either a November 7th or November 14th here in the Dallas area. It's going to be a Jumpstart management. We're going to talk about all the stuff we're talking about here today. It's a chance for you to bring your management team in. We're going to talk about selling, planning, procurement. We're going to have breakouts for special skills and to drill down on some of those topics. So you can bring your management team, and there's going to be something for each of their specialties, but there's also stuff that you need to hear and work through together. We're going to focus on the scalability. There are going to be some seats, while I'm selling, I really want management teams there. If you are an individual, want to come by yourself, we're going to have some seats available for you as well. Podcasts. Hey, we're getting more and more downloads, which is great. Try out a podcast, please subscribe. Okay. Rate them, comment on them. This all helps promote them. That's kind of how it all works. If you have ideas or topics you would like to hear me rant on or talk about or drill down more deeply, podcast is a great way for me to do that. It's a great way for me to share the backstories on some of the things that we're talking about. Okay. The Intentional Success Network, archives of everything. This webinar, like all other webinars, will also be archived over there. So if you're already subscribed in there, you'll get a notification. You can find all sorts of content. If you want to find that webinar on wearing too many hats, you can go find it there. It's there. Don't ask me where it is. I don't remember. Okay. What can I do? What else can I do for you? Look, I'm a business consultant, for many larger companies, and larger in our industry is basically if you've got more than 20 employees. We often start with a business assessment, take a look at where you're at. We do some strategy, we do some road mapping, and I give advice to your management team as they're doing the implementation on the changes that you want to make. That's not accessible for everyone. However, we also have some entry-level peer group coaching. If you want to join a coaching group, I've got some openings right now. I'd love to talk to you about them, introduce you to some of the gang. These are the companies that are generally in the 10 to 25 or maybe max 30 employees range, but there are a few smaller. Talk to me about it. It's a great way for me to teach a lot of things to a bunch of you at the same time, but the real value is in that network sharing their experiences, asking each other's questions, often about things that I can't begin to answer because it gets technical really quick, right? One-on-one coaching, if you need some help with your business, I can work with you for short term to help you get you on the right track. We can certainly talk about that. I do have some other coaches coming on with me that might be better suited for you. We can talk about that as well. So go to my website, click on Let's Talk, set up an appointment. Happy to chat with you. Love to learn your story. You got nothing to lose. And I give that time to you just freely, right? Next month's webinar, how to finally achieve balance in your business. Okay, we're going to go deeper into this concept of scalable balance. And why? Why is this so important to me? Let me tell you again, scalable companies are making 5 to 10 times more real profit with less stress and lower risk because their overhead is so much lower. Okay. We have reduced teams by from 80 employees to 35 employees, kept the same revenue, and are making 10 times more profit. I mean, it's unbelievable what we can do with just a little bit of time, some rejiggering, some new processes, some new mindset. I wanted to teach you as much about this as I can through these webinars, but if you want to get there faster, reach out to me and we'll talk about how we can get you there going faster. All right, quick summary, and get the right people in the right roles. Duh. You know, Jim Collins 101, get the right people on the bus, get those people into the right seats. Eliminate redundant processes. If you've got 5 project managers that pick up the job during the sales process, you have 5 redundant processes. You have 5 people doing the same thing. They're calling the same freelancers to see if they're available. They're trying to sub-rent gear without knowing, you know, what the other jobs need. Okay, it's crazy. We need to reduce that, and you need to professionalize your management team. You need to work on your business, not just in your business. So we're going to have to upgrade some people so that everybody else can be working at their highest and best use, instead of working themselves out of a job because we promoted them to a place where they can no longer be effective. All right. Questions here. All right. I'm going to stop the sharing because who needs to look at all of that anymore? All right. How much are the Jumpstart workshops? Great question. Don't know yet. I'm going to be able to watch a recording of this. If you mean this, yes, there's a recording of this. You'll have access to that. If you've registered in your name, you'll get an email here in just a little bit to tell you how to find the replay for that, or go over to Intentional Success Network. You can find it there. All right, content questions, bring them on. All right. So when should PMs be involved? You know, so we're going to have PMs, right? We're always going to have project managers. When should they be involved? And I'm hesitating here because I'm going to use a word I don't like to use. When does sales hand off to the project manager? I hate handoffs, right? So let me be clear about this. In all due respect to project managers, you know, you're doing a very valuable job. But my philosophy, my 80,000 foot view of the project management process is that project management is a process. Project manager is not a really good title because no 2 project managers in 2 companies do the same thing. Often no 2 project managers in the same company do the same thing, because project managers are band-aids for bad processes. And the more poorly defined your processes are, the more dependent you are on project managers. The sooner you need project managers involved. When you have salespeople saying, hey, this job's going to confirm, or I'm going to write this quote, I need a project manager now, that tells me there's a major lack of process inside the organization. So having said all of that, our goal in a scalable organization, and you'll never do it, but we can work towards that, is actually to eliminate the need for project managers. And in fact, 50% of the jobs that you do right now don't need a project manager. You just have no other way to get the job done because you don't have a process for doing it. You don't have the right people in place. You don't have enough bandwidth without a project manager. Imagine taking one of those great project managers and dropping them into your ops team, your planning team, and say, do what you do it so well, just do it for every job that comes through here. How much more throughput would you have in your organization? So having said that, our goal is always to move the project management process, their engagement, farther and farther and farther down the timeline. Even if we're highly scalable, you know, even in my best client, they still have jobs where the project manager or production manager has to get involved earlier because of client-facing issues, and that's fine. But for most of the work that you do, the project manager shouldn't do anything, because all the sub rentals are going to get taken care of, all the crew is going to get hired, the show book's going to get put together, and they can pick it up and say, review it and go, oh, great. I'll inform the crew. They've already got a copy of it, but I'll give them my spin on it, and I'll see them at the loading dock. So it's the right question. But the answer is as late as possible. Okay. Okay. So our sales force is really production managers, which is not uncommon, by the way. And they design, budget, and plan the show. I don't see a way to adapt this to your model. Okay. This is a common problem. This is a common question. So if you have a production manager system, I have this argument all the time. They're still salespeople. I don't want to be called a salesperson. I don't care. You're doing a selling process. It's just, we're just trying to understand how things are work. So if you have production managers doing the sales process, okay, they're writing the order, they're taking the order through the system, they're going out on show site to make it properly executed, right? The first thing I want to do, because if I have multiple project managers that are all doing the same thing, I have redundancy. So if I can centralize some of the things that project managers or production managers do, that's going to be a step in the right direction. It's actually going to give them more of their time back. If production managers don't have to book labor, don't have to book travel, don't have to run a scissors lift, don't have to manage sub rentals, but can simply consult on what they would like to have done, we're going to free up a lot of their time. We're going to get control over the costs and the documentation. You're going to be a better business, right? Inventory management, we can centralize. Any kind of purchasing function, we can centralize. This will reduce that redundancy, okay? And the next thing that we want to do is start to reduce the need for the production manager on job site. So rather than them selling themselves as the person who's going to go out and manage on the job site, they need to sell a production manager. Hopefully they were charging the customer for one anyway, but now they can come out and be the executive production manager and stand around and do nothing, okay? Which will give the client a lot of confidence that you're there and you don't actually have to do anything because you have a production manager for that job, which means that you're going to get to leave halfway through load in or after the first rehearsal start. So we can start getting you off of show site a lot sooner that way, all right? And, oh, well, hell, we're over time. Great. Means I was having a good time. I hope you were. I got one last question I want to answer here because I think it's really important, is who reviews proposals, right? In this process, who determines if you've got a selling group with a director of sales or customer success and a technical designer in that group who does budgeting or budgeting skills in there, we can have a system where the proposal review process takes place inside of the selling group. Okay, that is ideal. But if your company isn't big enough for that, okay, it's almost always going to be the owner or the technical designer that mimics what they do. Remember that last version of the small company, right? So somebody does have to review it, right? Salespeople, you know, we can't have salespeople reviewing for each other. We need some sort of management review because management is accountable. So a lot of times I get asked this question because people don't want to be reviewed, but the answer is no, we always have to review. All right. One more question. You guys can always leave. I know it's lunchtime. Mark asked the question, I find our line of work is fairly different from other industries. I don't disagree with you there. Hence finding those individuals that were promoted from the ground up more valuable, for example. Hiring someone with sales experience but zero AV experience. Do you agree? Hopefully this is not off topic. No, it's not off topic. Look, I would hire a good salesperson. I think you can teach anyone AV. I learned AV. It is not rocket science. If we have a technical design person, okay, if we set up, you know, our systems and processes, if we define our product codes so we can put budget together with things that normal people understand instead of technical jargon, you don't want technical jargon people talking to your customers, so hire someone who doesn't know it. I'm a huge advocate of bringing in people who are good salespeople who are not tied up in the AV of our AV business. So I hope that kind of addresses your question, but I think we need, you know, getting people trained up, finding good people, attitude and aptitude, and training them is a core competency. And I think it applies all the way across the organization. So having said all that, we're way out of time. I don't usually run 5 minutes over, but here we are. Thank you everybody for being here. The recording will be up soon. Don't forget to reach out if you want to chat about anything at all. And we'll see you on down the road. All right. Cheers.